Our people have endured great hardship in our time in this country, and we continue to face it today. Talks of reparations have been going on for many decades and have heated up recently due to the push from grassroots black media. Other people groups have received some form of reparations for things done to their people, but black people have yet to receive a dime for the many atrocities done to us in the past and currently. There has always been a benign neglect policy when it comes to dealing with so-called blacks. Our enemies will never give us anything to actually empower us. As I've already discussed, they cannot do this as it will lead to their own demise. Back in the early 20th century, they came up with laws to keep blacks out of certain areas. This was back when the dollar went much further than it does today, and blacks had more money in their pocket. The trick bag of integration was the white race swapping judicial barriers of entry for economic barriers of entry. It used to be you were not allowed to go somewhere, but it's now not being able to afford to go somewhere. It makes you believe there's been progress when you're actually in the same place. It's not hard to find work, but the work you find isn't enough to afford the cost of living. Blacks are boxed in the same way they were during Jim Crow. They're just using different methods. Our people are absolutely owed reparations for what has happened to us. Some have put out the figure of $20 trillion. With everything that's happened to us, this would seem low, but this is more than likely what can be substantiated in the court of law. Reparations for blacks descending from American chattel slaves is not a gesture of goodwill. It's payment for damages. Citizens of the United States have been driving a stolen car. The wealth of this country belongs to us, as we're the ones who built it. If someone steals a car and sells it to someone else, the original owner of the car can get the car back from the person who has it. The buyer of the stolen car can't say not to take it because he's not the one who stole it. What's stolen is to be returned to who it was stolen from. The prosperity of this country was obtained by thieves stealing from the oppressed. Reparations is about making those oppressed people financially whole again. They do it for Jewish whites. They did it for the Asians. They did it for the Native Americans. And they must do it for us. The big question is, how do we get these people to do this? How do we get these people to finally earmark tens of trillions of dollars for reparations to blacks, and black people start seeing reparations checks in their mailboxes? We must understand what we're asking for. We want our enemies to hand power over to us and allow us to build. Doing so would be suicide for the dominant society. It's not about them not having the money. They cannot survive in a world where blacks are able to prosper socioeconomically, as the white race is not capable of competing. Without any sort of violence, oppression, or ill will, they will be quickly erased as a people group. Asking white people to give black people reparations is seppuku for white people. This isn't about money. This is about power. Expecting your enemies to just give this to you is the muse of a fool. If we want the money, we will have to take it. We will have to take it in blood. You always want to do things without violence if you can. Violence should never be the default response. Nevertheless, in the way of receiving our well-deserved reparations, all roads lead to an altercation, another civil war between racist white society and oppressed black society. Political maneuvering will only lead us to an endless supply of symbolic gestures and various forms of benign neglect. There was a time when white society was prepared to give blacks whatever they wanted. This did not happen due to political maneuvers. It happened when blacks put boots to the ground and started putting in work. Malcolm gave us the phrase, by any means necessary. Are we willing to do what's necessary? Many don't want to go to war or fight, which is understandable. This generation does not understand war the way our fathers did. If we're not willing to take that step, then we need to forget about ever getting any money from a government who hates us and has gone out of its way for decades to make sure we get nothing. You'll have to cut people's throats before anyone cuts people's checks. As Israelites, we are guaranteed to get reparations. It will not be in the form of government checks. It will be something much greater than you being able to buy a nice house and a nice car with government funds. You will rule this entire planet with those who were once your enemies as your servants. With the events happening overseas and many of the biblical prophecies of the end times now coming to real life currently, we're near the end of the world as we know it. The Israelites, God's chosen people, whom the world was made for, will be given back the entire planet to rule and inhabit. This is what's promised to those of our people who endure in this truth to the end. I'm not telling you to give up everything and wait for this event to take place. Continue to stand up for justice and truth and speak out against injustice. Work, start businesses, have families, build wealth, protect yourself, your family, and your loved ones. But couple all this with adherence to the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. Am I ultimately telling people to give up on the notion of reparations from the U.S. government? Let me be frank here. Are you willing to have another civil war in this country, and are you willing to fight in it? If the answer is no, then you need to walk away from the idea of the government sending you a reparations check. In the same way, someone who hates you will not chop off all their limbs and hand them to you, is the same way the government is not going to give you reparations. We have a greater destiny and a greater portion than $1 million in every black person's bank account from Uncle Sam. The entire planet is ours, and we take hold of it by obedience to Torah law.